Bear with me. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you are here. I am Lauren Foster, the director of the Powerful Project, and we appreciate you taking the time to attend this and hear our wonderful speaker, Deborah McNelis, talk to you today. I just want to acknowledge our sponsors. Two Thumbs Up is an incredible organization that connects neurodiverse teenagers with neurotypical teenagers. And they do lots of neat things supporting communities. The Zones of Regulation is, and you can Google this, this is a fabulous program to teach children and help them understand their emotional regulation. And we will have the developer of the Zones of Regulation speak next year in 2022. Her name is Leah Kuipers, and that'll be a real interesting conversation all about sensory and emotional regulation. Perspective Center for Holistic Therapy is a holistic psychotherapy practice in Atlanta. And the therapists there specialize in different areas and take a very holistic wraparound approach to support children and adults and families. And they offer groups and workshops, and you should check out their website because they have some phenomenal groups and a lot of free groups as well. And I believe we have two of the therapists from Perspectives on today. One of them is a new mama. Welcome, Sarah and Liz. Then We Play Occupational Therapy. They're also Atlanta-based, and they specialize supporting kids with sensory differences. So fine motor as well as sensory, and it's a very caring occupational therapy practice. Green Orthodontics. Dr. Green is an orthodontist who has supported us this year with the speaker series, and we're grateful for him. And also Keller Knapp Realty. We are super appreciative of their sponsorship. And I think I'm going to turn the mic over to Deborah McNelis, who is an international speaker, author, and the creator of Neuronurturing. Her business online, you can find it, it's braininsightsonline.com. She's an early brain development specialist and has been passionate about teaching and sharing about infant brain development for many, many, many years. And you will tell from meeting her today, she is absolutely passionate about what she does. And it's a gift to have you here today, Deb. So I am going to turn the screen over to you now and let you present.
All right. Let me pull up my screen.
And while Deb is doing that, well, I guess I'll let you ask. I'm sure you're going to ask age ranges for parents, or do you want me
Yes.
to? Okay. And while Deb is pulling that up, if you have any feedback afterwards, we are open to ideas for future presentations, topics, presenters, feedback on anything about the process. We want to fine tune our presentations, so we welcome your feedback. Are you able to share?
I'm getting there.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure I gave you the permission on my end.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. We have such a quiet audience today.
We do.
Everybody's muted. And
what? For some reason.
Oh boy, what?
Yeah. Why am I not able to access it?
I don't know. We did have this all worked out, I swear, guys.
You did. Share my screen.
Yeah. It's not working?
No.
All right, let me switch my settings. Hold on. hold on here. Okay, so,
Here we go. I got it.
okay, good.
Sorry about that, everyone.
Okay, wonderful.
All right. There we go. So I want to echo what Lauren was saying as far as taking your time to be here and having the opportunity to hear this information that hopefully will enhance the interactions that you have with children and build some confidence in the interactions that you have with children. So it's all about bringing out the best in children. So to start with, we want to recognize that your brain is so important to this process. Your brain is important in two ways. That you're gaining any knowledge and understanding is going to contribute positively to any interactions that you have with young children. And the way that in which you interact with your mature brain is going to have the most positive impact. And I will make a point and clarify that point as we get into this a little further. So what children need most is adults that understand development. So I use the analogy of a garden. If you are going to plant a garden or plant a plant, it's so helpful and beneficial to have some knowledge and understanding of what science shows is beneficial for that plant. How much water it needs, what kind of soil it needs, what kind of light it needs. If you have that information, it's going to give you the best opportunity for growing that plant to thrive. If you don't have that information, it's just a hope, right? You just put it in the ground and you hope it's going to grow. But the more information you have, the better it's going to be. So that's the analogy I use. And so what children really need is for adults to have that understanding. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to gain some understanding. And it's all about brain development. This is the focus of the whole presentation, is on how children's brains develop, having that understanding. And I say it isn't complicated because what I do, my focus and my way of sharing is that I take the neuroscience research and I simplify it, make it practical, make it understandable so that it can be easily implemented into everyday life. So if you hear the term brain development, that may sound like, oh my gosh, we're going to get into neuroscience. But it's like I said, it's simplified, and to develop a brain well, it really isn't all that complicated. So I'm going to show you something here. What I decided, because sometimes people have that concept that brain development is really complicated, I decided, you know what, maybe we just need a new term to talk about it. So I trademarked the term neuronurturing. And when I was thinking about, well, then what goes into neuronurturing, I realized that in all my presentations over the years, I would say there's really 4 basic things that need to go into nurturing the healthy brain development of a child. And that is meeting the physical and security needs of a child and providing nurturing and play. And so if you're providing all of those 4 things, you're providing what a brain needs to help to develop in the most healthy ways. And I designed it in a circular image because all of them overlap. One isn't more important than another, or it isn't a hierarchy. First we need this and then we need that. It all interacts and it's all needed. And that's what we're going to go through today. In a short amount of time, I'm going to try to share as much as I can in this time frame. And we are going to leave some time at the end for questions as well. So when you think of those 4 main areas, just stop and think about your day. Are you meeting some physical needs? Are you providing safety and security for children? Are you providing play? And are you providing nurturing? You can pat yourself on the back because I am certain that you are providing all of those things. So to break it down even further, to clarify what goes into neuronurturing. Okay, well, what is important as far as physical needs? What is important about security needs? I broke it into 5 different aspects of each of those areas. So under physical needs, we need nutrition, hydration, movement, touch, and sleep. Under meeting the security needs, we need attunement, consistency, routine, choice, and safety. Under play, we need laughter and exploration and challenge and music and creativity/imagination. And under nurturing, we need responsiveness, presence, empathy, respect, and recognition. And so as we go through this today, I'm going to mention ways in which this is impacting as we talk about how our brain develops. And hopefully we'll have enough time at the end that I can touch on each of these areas in a little bit more detail. Now, a full presentation would get into, more extensive detail, but we'll try to get as much in as we can, as I said. So to begin understanding early brain development, we need to look at this statement. This was put out in Newsweek magazine in 1996, when a lot more of the research was becoming available. And the research was stating that it's the early childhood experiences that exert a dramatic and precise impact, physically determining how the intricate neural circuits of the brain are wired. Newsweek magazine put this out so that we would have this knowledge and this understanding, but they put it out in this way, the intricate neural circuits. It doesn't need to be worded this way. As I said, it can be simplified. So what this is basically saying is that it's the early childhood experiences that physically grows and develops a child's brain. The brain is experience dependent. It was dependent on experiences to make connections between the 86 billion brain cells that a child is born with. But brain cells need to make those connections to actually physically grow and wire the brain. And as I said, it's dependent on experiences to make that happen. So my guess is that all of you know the first portion of this statement. Regardless of the general environment, all children need stimulation and nurturance for healthy development. My guess is you know that. It's why you care about attending a program like this. So if these are lacking, or if a child's caretakers are indifferent or hostile, the child's brain development may be impaired. And the reason for that is because the brain adapts to its environment, and it will adapt to a negative environment just as readily as it will adapt to a positive environment. So that's important to understand because, as I said, the brain needs to make connections between those 86 billion brain cells, and 9 months of development isn't enough time to connect 86 billion brain cells. So a time of rapid and enormous amount of growth happens after birth, and especially in those first 5 years after birth. And so we have the opportunity then to provide the experiences that are going to be most optimal that science is showing us, just like planting that plant. It's showing us what is going to be most optimal for that brain development. And that brain, because of it being primarily developed after birth, will adapt to whatever happens most frequently in that child's life. So we have the opportunity to provide those most positive experiences. So I said we're not going to get into high levels of neuroscience terminology, but I am going to show you these 4 major brain areas. It's going to help make all of this make a lot of sense, and I'm going to make it applicable to your real life. So when a baby is born, the only part of their brain that is fully finished developing is the brainstem. And the brainstem is the area that's responsible for our keep us alive aspects, our breathing, our body temperature, our heart rate, all of those things that are going to keep us functioning and keep us alive. Those are the responsibility of the brainstem. So in a full-term baby, that's the only part of the brain that is fully finished developing. In a preterm baby, when you think of the things we have to monitor and provide for them, it's those things, right? Heart rate, breathing, body temperature. So as that preterm baby gets to their due date of development, then that brainstem will be fully developed. So the brain develops from the bottom upward. And so the next area of the brain to complete development is called the midbrain. The midbrain, and you can see it's pointing to two different areas. Right in the middle of the brain, see, it's not so complicated, is it? Midbrain. And then there's another area next to the brainstem that's called the cerebellum. And that part of the brain is responsible, a major part of that is responsible for balance and our movement skills. And so the midbrain is responsible for our motor skills and our sleep patterns. So as that newborn, this part of the brain develops in that newborn, now those sleep patterns become a bit more regular. And that baby's going to learn to roll over and sit up and crawl and walk as this part of the brain makes connections and gets developed and is becoming more mature. So it makes all kinds of sense when you know those ages and stages of development of what to expect. Well, this is why, because these areas are developing. So the next area of the brain to complete development is called the limbic system. And this is our emotional and memory area of the brain. There's many memory areas, but this is like the memory area that would be affected by Alzheimer's. So memory and emotion are really, really closely connected. So when a child is feeling safe and comfortable and in a trusting relationship, they are going to be able to remember what they're learning better. And the last part of the brain is called the cortex. That's the very top part of our brain, and it's considered the thinking area of our brain. So as I said, the brain develops from the bottom upward, but I want to make a point that all of these areas are developing all along the way. So even prenatally, some of these areas are developing. This is just the order that it completes development. And I'm going to get into the practical application in just a minute. But I wanted to talk about this area of the brain first. This area is a portion of the cortex, but it's called the prefrontal cortex. It's right behind our forehead. And when this area of the brain is fully finished developing, it allows us to prioritize our thoughts and gives us the ability to imagine and think in the abstract and anticipate consequences, to plan, to control impulses, and to regulate behavior. So, are those any skills that you would like the children in your lives to have? Most likely, yes, right? We would like children to be able to have these abilities and these skills. So you might be aware, when I first started doing these presentations, a lot of people weren't aware of this, and it's becoming more common that people do know this. So that's good. This is beginning to become better known and more common knowledge that this last area of the brain doesn't complete development until about the age of 25.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so this is what helps in having appropriate expectations for children or helping you understand your child. So this is where I was going to bring in those practical applications. So if you think of an 18-month-old, an 18-month-old should be, in healthy development, should be at the stage of getting into what?
Trouble.
Everything.
Yep, getting into everything. Exactly. That's what they should be doing. They should be exploring, and what's this and what's that, and how does this work, and what happens if I do that? That's what they should be doing. So there's not much planning in that, is there? They just toddle along, and this looks interesting, I'm going to check this out, right? But say a 4-year-old is playing with something and they see some books across the room. That 4-year-old might think, when I'm finished playing with this, I'm going to go check out those books. So his 4-year-old prefrontal cortex is beginning to develop. He can begin to do some planning. Now, let's think about a 2-year-old. See if this sounds like fun. You have a 2-year-old in the grocery cart in the checkout lane with the candy right at eye level. How's that sound like for fun?
Not so much.
Not so much, right? She wants that candy, right? And you say, no, we're not getting candy. Well, looking at this list, can she control her impulses or regulate her behavior right now?
No.
Not so much, right? She is gonna show a lot of emotion. She's gonna scream and cry and throw a tantrum and melt down and all of that. And what happens is when the prefrontal cortex is fully finished developing, it can take control of those other lower functioning areas of the brain. So right now, that 2-year-old's limbic area, remember that emotional area of the brain, is so fired up. She's got tons of emotion going on. And those are big emotions that her prefrontal cortex is very far from knowing how to develop yet, or how to control yet. So at 2 years old, it's very far from that 25-year-old mature brain to control those big emotions that she's having. So that's where your mature brain comes in, that I mentioned way at the beginning. So your limbic area might be firing up right now too, right? Oh my gosh, my child's all upset. Now I'm upset too, and I feel bad for her, and everybody's looking at me. How do I handle this? And all of those things might be going on in your brain, and your emotions might be firing as well. So if you stop, take a deep breath, calm yourself so that you can co-regulate with this child, you are going to be contributing actually to the development of her prefrontal cortex. You're providing that experience for her to have to work through those emotions. So you might say to her, I know you're so sad and you're so mad and you're so upset right now, aren't you? So you're naming those feelings, you're acknowledging her feelings, and you're empathizing with her. I know it's so hard when you can't have what you want, isn't it? So all of that experience is helping to calm her through it and providing, as I said, the experience that's going to contribute to an experience that's going to add to the development of her prefrontal cortex. So if that calming response, that co-regulation happens repeatedly, it has a positive impact. And so you know what doesn't help? Handing her a phone or a tablet. It misses the opportunity for her to have that experience of that co-regulation.
And can I just say what you're describing, like how to connect before like trying to correct the behavior, it works with it's really healthy to use for all ages.
Exactly. So when we think of like so a scenario that I like to share related to teens and adolescents helps us really understand how that prefrontal cortex is still developing and not fully mature yet. So I use this scenario that this mom is sitting at the kitchen table with her daughter and throws out an abstract idea. And she says, if your friend came to you and said that their parents weren't going to be home and she was going to have a party at their house and the other kids were going to bring beer to the party. And so this mom is creating this whole possible scenario for her daughter. Say her daughter's 15. And so sitting at that kitchen table, they talk through it. And the mother says, what would you do if your friend came to you and said she was going to have this party and she wanted you to come? Sitting there talking with her mother, she can think through it. She can think in the abstract. She can imagine what that situation might be. She can anticipate those consequences. Oh, Mom, you would be really mad at me if that happened. Oh, I could get kicked off the soccer team if that happened. She could think through all of that. And she could get to a conclusion to say, you know what, if she asked me to do that, I would say no, because it would risk me being on the soccer team, and I don't want to risk that. And I don't want you to be mad at me, Mom. So her prefrontal cortex was operating just fine. She was doing all these things on this list, right? However, what if her friend actually did come to her and said, we're having this party and it's going to be so fun and you have to be there. You're my best friend. I can't have a party without you. And everybody's going to be talking about it on Monday at school. And what might happen then? She might go to the party, right? What's the difference? The difference is her limbic area got all fired up with her friend encouraging her with all that emotion and that excitement. And it was still too much for her prefrontal cortex to control, just like the 2-year-old. So sitting at the kitchen table, it's called cold cognition. She was able to activate her prefrontal cortex. Her limbic area wasn't all fired up. But in the real situation with the emotion, she had a difficult time still regulating and controlling her impulses. So this is how it all happens. This is, of course, a drawing of 2 of those 86 billion brain cells, and it reaches out with these dendrite, these finger-like things, to make connections with one another. And it's, like I said, the experiences that makes this occur. So what happens is the brain continuously makes these connections at a rate in these early months and years, at a rate of about 1 million per second. So it's making it's making these connections at a rapid pace and filling up the brain. But it gets to the point kind of like this closet. Have you ever had an experience with a closet like this? Or that drawer in the kitchen that you just keep putting things in? And it gets to a point where you go, oh my gosh, I can't find anything. This doesn't work well. It doesn't function. This is too inefficient. I need to clear it out. I can't find anything. It doesn't work. It's exactly what happens with the brain. The brain starts going, oh, it's so filled with connections right now. I can't function well. So it starts eliminating some of the connections that have been made from experiences, so that it can get more organized. So the brain actually does that. It eliminates some of those connections. But did you start wondering, well, which connections does it eliminate? How do I know, what ones are going to be pruned away? It's called pruning. Which ones are going to be pruned away? Well, when you clean out your closet or you clean out that kitchen drawer, which things do you eliminate? The things you don't use very frequently, right? The things you don't use often. That's exactly what the brain does. Remember how I said it adapts to whatever environment it is exposed to, whether positive or negative? Whatever happens most frequently, most repeatedly in that child's life, the brain goes, oh, I'm holding on to this. This happens a lot in my life. This happens over and over again. I guess I need this skill. Guess I need to to know how to do this. I guess I need to know how to handle this. So whatever happens frequently, the brain holds on to and makes strong connections. So this is a hugely, hugely, hugely magnified image of at newborn, at 3 months, at 15 months, and at 2 years. You can see all those connections being made. And then what happens is those experiences that have been made from repeated experiences, or those connections that have been made from repeated experiences that the brain's going to hold on to, it creates something called myelin, creates this sheath, like this coating over that connection. So think of an electrical cord in your home. All of this is an electrical chemical impulse that's happening in your brain. So it's electrical chemical impulse firing across these tiny gaps between these connections. And this myelin coats those connections. So with your electrical cord in your home, they're not the bare wires, right? It has the coating on them. So it makes the electricity transmit that much more quickly and efficiently. That's exactly what the myelin does in the brain. And myelin is a fatty, waxy substance. So that's why it's so essential that children, well, all of us, have the essential fatty acids in their diet for their brain development. So this all creates what are called pathways in the brain. And it's just like on the ground. If you go over and over and over the same pathway repeatedly, a strong pathway in the brain is created. So that's what you're doing through repeated nurturing experiences and providing these positive experiences for children. You're creating these strong pathways. Now, if you went over the fence and went through the grass the other direction, the first time you went that way, not much would happen, would it? But what if you started going that way repeatedly? A new pathway would be created. So that's how we create new pathways. That's how we learn. We do repetition. We have experiences repeated again and again, and practice. Now, what if this pathway, this original pathway, is one you don't want any longer? You can create those new pathways. You can create new practices and new repetition to create these new pathways that you want, rather than the old pathway that wasn't something you felt was as positive. But it takes a lot of time and patience and consistency and repetition to change a pathway that was already wired in the brain. So that's why the majority of my work is emphasized on the birth to 5 years, because that's the time of that most rapid change. The good news is we can always change our brain throughout our entire lives. It just takes more time, patience, consistency, and all of that to make those changes later. So it's the whole reason that the expression, it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks, exists, because it's better to teach and train that dog as positively as possible in the first place. Same thing.
But just to reiterate, if there are parents who are here with older kids, it's never too late to make changes.
Exactly.
And our kids will still reap the benefits, as will we, when we, take different paths, make new connections, try new techniques, let go of what doesn't really work.
Exactly. Throughout our lives, the brain is always changing. Every single second, our brain is always changing. So that's the wonderful news, that we can always make those changes at any point in life. So wow, repeating experiences really makes a difference to my brain. Repetition creates strong pathways. So I want to share with you the work that I do was based on the work of Dr. Bruce Perry, who some of you may be familiar with. He came out with a book in collaboration with Oprah just in this past April. It's called What Happened to You, because it's all about what happened to you And what we were just talking about, that changes can always be made, but we don't look at it as what's wrong with you. It's what happened to you. And that's how we can make those changes and change those pathways with that understanding. So he created what is called the neurosequential model. And so this shows those 4 brain areas that I mentioned and how healthy development should be, that the brainstem has the least connections in it. The midbrain would have the next largest amount of brain cells and connections in it. Then the limbic area would be the next largest, and the cortex would be last or have the most connections in it. It's last to develop, but it would have, in optimal development, have the most connections in it. So there you can see it correlates with brainstem is safety, midbrain is movement, limbic is emotional engagement, and the cortex is related to learning. So those are the ratios for healthy development. Now let's look at, if a child has had developmental trauma, what happens is the pyramid gets inverted from the neurosequential model. And a child that's had a lot of toxic stress or a developmental trauma, or trauma in general in their life, is going those experiences are going to give more experiences to the survival focus of that child. They're going to be focused on safety and security, and they're going to have less experiences to create the well-developed cortex for cognition and their social development. So hopefully, I know we've got a short amount of time, so I can't go into a lot of detail about that, but hopefully just seeing this image conveys that understanding. So with that in mind, Dr. Bruce Perry talks about the 3 R's to be reaching that learning brain. So we want to start by regulating, calming that lower part of the brain. That's where the stress response system is activated, in that lower part of the brain. Because if you remember, it's the heart rate and the breathing and then the motor skills. So those lower parts of the brain are where that stress response happens, so that we either fight or flee a situation. So what we want to do is regulate. As I talked about with the 2-year-old, we want to co-regulate. We want to regulate first, get them regulated, get them calm. Then we can relate to them. And then last, we can reason with them. But we can't jump right to, in the midst of a meltdown, we can't go right to reasoning with them. They're not in that place in their brain. We need to co-regulate, then relate, then reason. And that's how the brain is going to learn too. A child needs, for learning to happen, they need to be in a safe, comfortable, secure relationship and environment. And then their brain is open for learning. Otherwise, they're going to be in that stress area of their brain, and the brain isn't going to be open for learning. So repetitive experiences change a child. And so I think we have a few minutes to quickly go over those 4 areas of the neuronurturing model. So feel free to put questions in the chat as we go through this, and we'll get to questions in a couple minutes. So physical needs, as I mentioned, these 5 areas. Sleep is critically important to keeping the brain regulated. We all know what an overtired child is like, right? It's because the brain is out of balance. And so we need to ensure that a child has adequate amounts of sleep. And this is a time where they process those experiences that they've had during the day to be making those connections. Then nutrition. We need to consider how important nutrition is to the brain. Often we think of nutrition only related to the body, but it really impacts learning, moods, behavior, and brain function. So providing one important aspect of this is providing adequate amounts of protein, especially at breakfast, versus a simple carbohydrate. Because if we give them a simple carbohydrate, such as a Pop-Tart or something, what happens is 30 minutes later, the brain is feeling stressed and it releases the stress hormone, and that activates a child to feel that they might be hyperactive, they can't focus, they can't sit still, they might be in a bad mood because their blood sugar level has dropped, and all of that stress hormone has activated all of this. But if we give them an adequate amount of protein instead, the serotonin, the feel-good chemicals are released, and a child and adult can focus and pay attention and learn and be in better moods as a result. Back to sleep, I wanted to mention quickly too that the circadian rhythm of teens does change, and so that's why teens tend to stay up later and get up later during those adolescent years, because their brain is actually changing. And so it's really difficult with schools that start early for high school students. Their brains aren't really awake. And maybe some of you have experienced that. Nature is incredibly important. Even 10 minutes in nature can calm the brain and refocus and improve attention and focus, and it just takes away the need for the brain to focus its attention on so many things coming into it at once.
The Clockwoods had a
hydration.
Harris Teeter prescription as well.
Can everybody mute themselves so we can not hear?
How do I get out of this?
Please. Thank you. Uh-oh.
Hydration. The brain is like 75% water. We need to keep it hydrated. When we're 1%, when we are feeling thirst, just feeling thirst, we are 1% dehydrated already at that point, and it affects brain function. Movement. We have to move. Here we've been sitting for 45 minutes. We need to move. We get dysregulated if we don't move or have some rhythm. So movement is critically important, and movement teaches a lot to the brain and how to function. And touch. We need touch. We all need it. During COVID, it's a harder thing, but babies fail to thrive if they lack touch. The need for nurturing. We need to have, the children need presence. They need empathy. I touched on that a bit already. They need recognition and respect for who they are. Each child is unique. Every brain is unique. Every child is unique and beautifully unique. So we need to recognize them as who they are, the developmental stage that they are, and respect who they are as an individual and as a child that is learning. One of my grandsons said to my daughter one time, she was getting a little impatient with something he was doing, and he said, "Mom, I'm just learning this." It was like, she went, "Oh gosh, yes." Wise words from a child, right? So, and responsiveness. Responsiveness is beyond incredibly important. We need to be responding to children, especially in infancy. Responding to the communicated needs that the child is expressing is essential. It's not spoiling the child. We need to, that's exactly what they need. It's just the opposite of spoiling a child. And play. Play is essential. We can't, too frequently in our country, the academics is forced on children and brought down to younger and younger and younger ages. And it's having an impact on their brain development. So the positives are to to provide creativity, opportunities for creativity, opportunities for imagination. If you remember, that's a high functioning area of the brain. Provide opportunities to benefit from music. There's just a wealth of information that shows the benefits of music and learning instruments at young ages. Exploration. I mentioned that 18-month-old should be exploring everything, trying this, trying that. What does this do? Laughter relieves stress. It's a real positive thing as an individual, but it also creates connection and oxytocin in relationships. And providing challenge. We need to always be challenging ourselves to growing that brain and new connections and new pathways. So I know that was a quick overview, but hopefully that has brought some insights for you. And again, I want to, I'm sorry, I missed security. Another huge one, because the lower functioning area of the brain, our brain is always unconsciously throughout our lives, unconsciously scanning the environment and the people in it for safety. So we need to do all we can to keep children safe. We need to attune to them to they feel that security, that someone's there consistently for them. Providing choice relieves stress for children, and that provides some security that I have some choice in my life. And then routines builds that security too. Knowing what to expect next helps keep a child feeling calmer. So you are a brain developer. I actually created t-shirts that said that. So anyone that is interacting with a child is a brain development, where you can't just say, oh, I'm just a preschool teacher. Oh, I'm just a parent. Nope, you are a brain developer. So wow, it feels so good to have you provide what my brain needs most. For a note from the children, we just want to be understood, want to feel safe, want to play, and want to be loved. That's all. So that's kind of the summation of those 4 areas, right? That's what the children need. So thank you for making a difference in whatever way you are impacting young children. And this is a slide with my contact information. I know this is a short amount of time to share all of this, so feel free to reach out, ask any questions. I've declared November to be Neuronurturing Month. So I'm sharing Neuronurturing Insight every day of the month. And so you can find those on any of my social media posts, or you can contact me if you want to be signed up for an email that you get daily with those included.
And the Neuronurturing packets are fabulous for parents, grandparents, childcare providers, early childhood educators. They have, you want to share about it? There's an activity on one side, and then the brain research, or the information, what it's doing, why it's helpful on the other side. And they're simple, easy to use. So I love using them, and they're great. Just a great.
This is what they look like. They're just card packets hung on a ring. And like Lauren said, on the front of the card, it gives a interaction suggestion or activity idea to do during everyday life. They fit into everyday life. And then on the back of that card, it gives an insight as to how that is helping support the brain development. So there's one for each age from birth through age 5. So this is Love Your Baby. This is fun, or More to Do While I'm 2. So there's one for each age. There's a nature one. They're also in Spanish. So that's a quick version of sharing that. And they're all written in the child's voice, because this is what the children want the adults in their lives to do with them.
Deb, after hearing this, it makes me think, oh, we should collaborate, because I would love if anybody, on this call today has questions, or if you recognize like there's a challenge area, we could definitely go more into more depth about, well, what can you do if you know transitions are challenging, or if you know that there are hard times during the day. Sometimes you just need someone neutral out of the picture to help brainstorm and come up with trying different techniques to make that new pathway, instead of getting kind of tricked into the old reaction when we might flip our lid when an emotional button is pushed. And I think, all parents can relate to that feeling sometimes. So hopefully you've gotten some new thoughts and resources, so that when even if you feel stressed out, if you're doing, if you picture the neuronurturing image, and if you're doing those things, you are on the right path for your child's brain development.
Definitely. Because what we need to do for ourselves is recognize all the positives that we do every day. Because what we tend to do, I do a whole presentation on this too, but what we tend to do is at the end of our day say, oh, I didn't get that done. Oh, I meant to do that. Oh, I should have handled that differently. And we do all of that to ourselves rather than turning it around and saying, wow, but I did do this. I did do that. Oh, that was wonderful. And if you stop to realize, you probably did 100 nurturing things throughout the day.
And when we switch and take our own new path in how we judge or look at ourselves, we are being a role model for our kids. So I believe everybody would probably agree, we want to foster confidence in our kids and problem solving. And when we are not so hard on ourselves and try to use our oops or our mistakes as opportunities to learn and change, we're really kind of laying out a blueprint so that our kids are picking up on, whoops, I didn't mean to go this way. I can backtrack and fix my mistake.
Right. And repairing a relationship is it's invaluable. So, oh, you know what, I didn't handle that the way I really wanted to. I apologize. I'm sorry that I did that. That wasn't the way. I should have calmed my brain first, or whatever you want to say.
Yeah. Are there any questions? We have a few more minutes. If you do, you can just unmute yourself and ask.
Thank you for an insightful presentation. I had a good time. I just want to ask, how do I get the cards? If I want to get those cards,
they are available. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thank you for sharing that you did. The packets are available on my website, which is braininsightsonline.com.
And we'll send that out. Everybody will, in the next day or so, we'll send an email to all the participants today with your website.
braininsights.com.
No.
braininsightsonline.com.
Online.com. Then I have a comment. I registered for this program and I didn't get the link for the program. I had to reach out to the facilitator because I saw her contact and I contacted her when I was trying to register for the program. If not that, I won't be here. Okay. And I actually registered for the program, supplied my email. I do not understand why I did not get the information about the link for participation.
And I apologize, and I will look into that. I don't have an answer for you right now, but I can assure you I will look into it. We are actually, the Powerful Project is getting, the DeVoe group is donating Salesforce to the nonprofit. So we will have a much more streamlined communication system starting in 2022. So for the upcoming events, they're up on the screen right now. We have some additional amazing speakers, wealth of knowledge, and the enrollment, the registration process, and the email with the link should be more streamlined. So I'm so grateful that you did make it here. I apologize.
Thank
And
Yes.
yeah. Anybody else? I'm going to give a quick shout out for just the events next year. In February, the author Trey Anthony, she's a playwright and an author, but she's really like a comedian / coach / author. She is just very funny, and she'll be talking about her life, and her book is called Black Girl in Love with Herself. It's a great read. Then in April, Wednesday, April 14th, we have the founder, the creator of the Zones of Regulation, Leah Kuypers, will be speaking about why and how she developed this program. It's used in schools all over the world. If you Google Zones of Regulation, you will see tons of information. She has books and games, and it's really helpful for kiddos and adults learning about their emotions and regulation. Then Friday, May 6th, we have Dr. Paul Nussbaum. He is a brain health specialist. Whereas Deborah specializes in early brain development, he looks at brain health across the lifespan, specifically with the aging brain. And he's also part comedian, part doctor. He's a funny guy. And then Friday, September 16th, we will have the developers of the Brain Talk program. This is an online program for educators, therapists, teachers, parents. They're short video clips that kids actually are interested in watching, and it teaches all about the brain. And they'll be talking to us. Then on Thursday, November 3rd, we have the topic of interoception with Kelly Maher. She is an OT, and that's her specialty. She's a wealth of knowledge. And then in December, we will have a Flourishing Life with Wendy Watkins, who is a hoot. She's from Atlanta, moved out to Oregon, and she'll be talking about stress and life and tools for surviving the holidays. So we hope that you will join us next year. We wish you all a very happy and healthy Thanksgiving holiday and winter holidays. And thank you so much for taking the time and caring to be here today. We appreciate you. And I will just say,
thank you very much.
thank
Have a
you
great
again.
Thank you.
Good night. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks so much for the impact you make on children.
It means a lot. The children are our adults of tomorrow. All righty. Good night, everyone.
Take care, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Deborah. This is wonderful.
Glad you enjoyed it. Bye.
Bye-bye.